Podcast culture is built on the illusion of intimacy. Someone talking into your skull, maybe some lo-fi beats under it. It's a simulation of friendship. But there exists 5% of smart rebels who do not buy that. They've spotted the emotional tax, and they decided that they don't want synthetic companionship. They're like early humans before fire, staring into the dark, unafraid. Everyone else needs background chatter like a torch, and this guy's just sit there, eyes wide, fully absorbing the void. They've also accidentally become the last keepers of mystery. Because when you don't fill every silence with expert commentary, your thoughts start fermenting into strange, unpredictable flavors. Meanwhile, everyone else is basically farming rented thoughts, sponsored by Squarespace. They also have this hilarious superpower. They don't know trends. While everyone is talking about some scandal or productivity guru, they're like, who? They're not pretending. They genuinely missed the cultural update. They're living 1 or 2 algorithms behind, which paradoxically keeps them sane. They're like psychological time travelers, walking through the present without the burden of every hot take. You know what? Deep down, the world secretly envies them, because there's something seductive about a person who doesn't need constant input to feel alive. They're rare now, a little mysterious. The modern monk disguised as your friend who just happened to forget their earbuds again. They've discovered that the mind left alone eventually starts throwing its own parties. Strange parties. Beautifully weird ones. You just have to give it enough silence to start the music. Economically, they're bad for business. Terrible. They don't click ads, don't quote experts, don't join Patreon tiers. Their inner life can't be monetized because it doesn't stream. You can't market silence. You can't track it, algorithm it, or optimize it. It doesn't scale. Which is why it quietly terrifies the modern machine. The whole system runs on engagement. And these people just sit there, peacefully unengaged, breaking capitalism's heart one unsponsored thought at a time. This video is sponsored by Square. Okay, I'm joking. Non-podcast listeners are often terrifyingly self-entertaining. Give them silence, and they'll make a circus out of their own thoughts. 1 minute, they're thinking about the shape of clouds. Next minute, they're psychoanalyzing their cat. Then they're wondering if birds have regional accents. It's chaos. But it's theirs. Meanwhile, podcast addicts outsource that chaos to someone else's structure. The non-listener likes the unfiltered absurdity of their mind. They've realized that boredom is a lost art form, and they're Renaissance painters of it. They know that if they watch too much of others' dialogues, they'll start imitating tones and adopting views. So, they stay clean. One guy said, "I can't listen because my brain is like wet clay. It picks up every fingerprint." That's philosophical hygiene. And humorously, these people live in constant confusion. But it's a high-quality confusion, because they don't have someone whispering life hacks into their brain every morning. They've made peace with the static. You can't sell them mindfulness apps because they're already doing it by accident. They stare out of bus windows. They walk in circles. They have thoughts that start with "what if" and never resolve. They practice daydreaming like it's a secret sport. The longer they stay unplugged, the funnier and more deranged their brains get, in the best way. Their attention, freed from expert supervision, starts noticing absurd micro-realities everyone else scrolls past. They'll suddenly realize that every so-called deep podcast is just 2 people politely interrupting each other to say, "That's so real," until it becomes a verbal tennis match of validation. They start spotting invisible comedy everywhere. Like how inspirational outro music always fades in precisely when someone says something mildly profound, like happiness is inside you. Or the alpha male podcasters, just 2 dudes aggressively agreeing with each other between protein shakes. They all have the same tone, that slow, knowing cadence that says I read 1 article about neuroscience, and now I'm Socrates. They start every sentence with "what people don't realize is," and end every episode by trying to sell you gratitude journals. Their microphones cost more than their insights. The wellness hosts speak like they've microdosed on chamomile. Relationship podcasters treat minor text arguments like international crises. They start seeing the formula behind the facade. Every episode title begins with "How to," as if the host is the oracle of functionality, here to fix your pathetic mortal habits. There's always that fake laugh right after a sponsor mention, like, haha, yeah. Anyway, this episode is brought to you by Protein Yogurt for Your Soul. The unplugged person starts laughing at how everyone sounds mid-possessed by a brand. They can't unsee this theater, the deliberate pauses, the performative vulnerability, the slow inhale before saying something that isn't profound but wants to be. People who don't listen to podcasts have an inward refusal to let voices colonize their inner space. Podcasts belong to the age of informational grazing, where thoughts are outsourced, and experience are pre-digested into listenable lessons. But those who avoid them move through a rare psychological current. They distrust the endless commentary on existence, and instead want to be inside it. Psychologically, they often possess an anti-consumer temperament. The podcast listener on average seeks to be fed, whether it's motivation, insight, scandal, or story. So they basically go around whispering, "Feed me, feed me." The non-listener, by contrast, resists the passive absorption of secondhand reflections. They are suspicious of the modern ritual of having one's inner monologue replaced by someone else's. They believe that thinking must be cultivated through one's own silence, boredom, or conflict, not through the imported rhythm of another's voice. There's something monastic in their psychology, a defense of their mental territory against the smooth, benevolent invaders of content. They may also exhibit a heightened threshold for stimulation. Where most people crave a steady feed of input, the non-podcast mind has learned to metabolize its own stimuli. They can walk, cook, or commute without demanding external occupation of thought. This trait is deeply archaic. It recalls a pre-digital nervous system that knew how to endure stillness without panic. Socially, these people often appear detached from trends because they refuse to borrow language from the echo chambers of podcast culture. They don't say, "That's such a dopamine hit," or "as this expert said." Their ideas arrive unbranded, raw, harder to digest, but truly their own. They may seem slower to adapt, but it's because they process directly from reality rather than from its intermediaries. There's also an aesthetic component. To not listen to podcasts is to reject the cult of endless improvement. The modern psyche is addicted to self-optimization through voices. But the abstainer finds this aesthetic nauseating. The refusal is a hidden sophistication. They choose the raw encounter with confusion over the packaged wisdom of someone else's narrative arc. Underneath it all lies a paradoxical intimacy. The person who doesn't listen to podcasts often lives closer to their own interior weather. They understand that not all learning must sound like someone speaking. Some of it sounds like the world breathing through you when you finally stop trying to fill it with talk. People who don't listen to podcasts are the last rebels in a world where everyone's got something playing in their ears. It freaks people out. Someone once asked me, "You don't listen to anything when you jog?" As if silence were an act of violence. But that's exactly what it is. A small, quiet rebellion against the culture of the constant commentary. They crave raw thought. They don't want someone breaking life into digestible 45-minute wisdom snacks. They'd rather choke on their own confusion than be spoon-fed clarity with ad breaks. One woman told me, "If I listen to podcasts too much, my voice disappears. I start quoting people instead of thinking." That's the key. People who don't listen aren't trying to be special. They're trying to stay original. They know how slippery identity is when everyone's words start to merge.